there's a game that you wanted to talk about, CSK versus RCB,
Yes, I
right?
did. What you think of
It,
that? As in for me, forget the game. As in I think, it was a pendulum game. It swung one way, then the other, and again the other way, and then eventually RCB won a home game by 2 runs. And I think they bowled well. Yash Dayal to restrict 15 runs in that last over with and getting MS
yeah,
Dhoni out, top stuff, right? And I think. It's the CSK were really expensive in the death, and Romario Shepherd took them to the cleaners, so to speak. 300 and what? 379 strike rate in that innings or something like that. Man,
ridiculous.
that's match winning effort that just flies under the radar, right?
Mm.
So that was a top game. But what I want to talk about is the fan battles that happen after the game, right? I love both teams. Both are very dear to my heart. But you on the
That's not what
outside,
he said
when
off air,
you
by the way. He's actually got a clear favorite, but he said we
what a
couldn't mention
liar.
it on air.
Stop doing that. I live in India. Stop doing that. It might be all fun and jokes for you. I have
I,
to live
I
through the
need,
hate, please.
I need to hold up a card that says joke after that, just in
Yes.
case people.
Yes, you do. we need someone to just put something up saying it's a joke. But what do you make of it from the outside, Kimbo? Because these fan fights are getting quite intense, eh?
We've talked about this before. I think the RCB fan base is the most full-on fan base for a team in the IPL. And do you remember when the RCB women's team won? And the
Yeah.
way that the fan base embraced that, and that for me was, I mean, as someone who's always loved women's cricket, it was just great to see
Yeah.
people getting excited about a franchise league and everything else. But I just think there is something else about RCB. But there is also they are the team that everyone kind of laughs at the most, right? Like, I mean, there's all the money, all the stars and everything, and they haven't achieved. I said this before the tournament. They should have won an IPL by now by accident, right? Because early on, when a league starts, there's so much random. Like, look at Rajasthan, right? Like Rajasthan have won a tournament, right? Whereas if you look at Delhi and Punjab and RCB, it's like, how have they not managed to just slip by one in one year? And that, then they've. I know we talk about Chinnaswamy, and you and I have done a whole podcast on that before. And also, I worked for RCB very briefly. I know you've been around. Not always the best run franchise. I think that's also safe to say. So we know there are reasons why that has happened. They still should have fluked one. But the passion that their fans have is infectious for me, right? Like I love the feedback that you get from them. But then the other side is that, I don't know where you would, but Chennai and Mumbai are kind of like, Lakers and the Celtics, right? Like it's, they're the two teams that have become the major franchises. And RCB have become the New York Knicks, right? The team that everyone knows, and everyone knows the fans are awesome, but the team is not as good as the fan base. So I didn't see the aftermath of that one because that was after I made my runs and I could barely pick up my phone. So what happened with the fans? Take me through what actually happened.
It was pretty intense. As in, outside the stadium, they were mocking. They were mocking the team, the players of the team, when the bus was leaving the stadium. That was one thing that I saw, which I thought was in bad taste. The other one that I saw were fans fighting with each other. A CSK fan and an RCB fan, both locals from Bangalore, fighting with each other. I saw women being heckled, which felt unsavory, to be very honest. It was in very bad taste. But we saw that even in Chennai last year, to be fair. So again, uncalled for, unsavory. It's not on whatsoever. Women have to feel safe in the place that they live. And you saw it getting, it's gotten pretty intense. They're holding up jerseys, white T-shirts marked with black lines on it, stating that for 2 years that CSK were banned. They're taking, they've kind of written MS's number on it and Thala under it, but depicting that they were banned and they were in jail for 2 years or whatever, right? Again, it's getting a little intense, and it's getting a little beyond sport, which concerns me. Because at the end of the day, this is a sport, right?
I mean, you're right. If people aren't safe at the stadium, then that's the number one concern, right?
Yeah.
And I'm 100% with you on that. There is an element of, though, that let's be honest, that these teams are all made up in focus group. Well, not even in focus groups. Like some owners just came up with random names, right? And Royal Challengers is largely because of the whiskey label, isn't it? Of Vijay Mallya. Like, there's a couple of other franchises that sound like they're cigarette packets from the 1950s. And when it first started, come on, Super Kings. Super Kings feels like I think my grandfather used to smoke Super Kings. I could be wrong. Right. So if you think about some of the names, and it's the same with the Big Bash and everything else, right? Anytime there's a sports name, there is something great about the fact that there is a passion that is gone beyond the sort of marketing and PR and everything else, because that's there's with all due respect to the 100, they're like 10 or 15 years away from having a fan base that cares this much about this sort of stuff, right? And so that's the bit I like. This isn't just now what it used to be, which is cricket's on every night. There's a little bit of Bollywood. There's cheerleaders, right? It's now really about your team. And I notice it more and more. Like, I started covering it the first year, right? In the first year, no one cared at all. Like, maybe the Mumbai fans a little bit, but no one really cared all that much. And it's grown and grown and grown. That's the good side. The bad side is what we see in football, right? In soccer.
Yeah, it's like it felt almost like hooliganism, right?
That's when you have to start getting on top of it, right? Because football took ages to get that out of the game, and it's still there, right? Like there's still elements of it that haven't ever been defeated, where racism happens, where sexism happens. The first football game I think I ever went to, and I've written about this for a magazine called The Blizzard, which is a football magazine, of I think it was a Swansea player, got injured, and they're just screaming at him, right? Like, and I was just like, guys, he's just injured. He's on the ground. Like, he's not even going to play against you for the rest of this game. They're waiting for a stretcher to come on. And you're like, you've gone too far. But I also understand that sport is a conduit to get out all the crap from your body. Do you know what I mean? Oh, your whole week. So I do understand that is what it exists for.
But there's such a positive. There's also a very positive way to manifest that frustration, right?
There is.
I went to South Africa when I did the SA20, which I'm telling you is a beautifully run tournament, and I love the fact that my experience of cricket was just as a sport, right? And people were there for the love of the game. And you could feel it. It was thick in the air. They just want to have a good time, enjoy each other's company, dance to the music, and just cheer their team on. If they lost, it's okay. We still had a good time with each other, right? You had a little bit of banter, but that was about it. Today, my concern is, and these are two of my favorite teams, out of and KKR being my third, but these two, no, not a joke. That's a joke. What a dog. But my concern is we shouldn't. The passions shouldn't run so high that it becomes life and death.
Yeah.
I think it should.
Look, what I was going to say before is I did this project during COVID, like a radio documentary on why sport matters, right? Because during COVID, we all suddenly got a shock when there was no sport for a little while, right?
Yeah.
And you really understand why sport matters. And I was talking to this one psychologist, and he was basically saying, if you really look at it, what sport has done in society is it has replaced generals, right? And dictators. So that in the old days, you got your satisfaction out of the fact that your area, were stronger than the area next door, or smarter, or more strategically aware, and you would go to war, and generals were the sports stars of their days, right? The people who led into battles. And sport sort of replaces warfare in that kind of thing. And the other thing that he told me was that the reason that Manchester City and Manchester United were formed as football clubs is because teenagers were out on the streets doing knife crimes with each other, and they needed to bring them into a structured situation. And from those structured situations came two of the most famous sporting organizations we've ever had. Sport plays a role in actually allowing us to have that passion without it being life and death. And what me and Robbie are saying is, if it gets to the point where people don't feel safe at a cricket ground, right? And we've seen that with other sports, then clearly it's not fulfilling the role that we want it to fulfill. We want it to have, you want to be able to do that. I always think of my uncle. My uncle was like this real, he won't listen to this, so it's fine. But he's a bit of a nerd, like, you know, a real staid guy. Like for our family, people are usually a bit louder and a bit more brash, and he's a really, you know, very respected person. And then he goes to watch his team, Essendon, play in Aussie rules football, and he's like a maniac, and he's screaming, and like the veins in his neck are coming. And then he goes out afterwards and he goes, you know, would you like to get a cappuccino with me? You know, should we go to the local, you know, Chinese bar, you know, for a meal or whatever? He's completely gone back to the old person straight away, straight afterwards. I understand that, but we also have to understand that sport has to be for everyone, right?
Yeah.
And that there's a difference between having a little bit of fun, right?
Yeah.
And actually, you know, some of the stuff that can get toxic. And it's
Yeah.
cricket has never really had to deal with this at the level that it's probably going to have to deal with it over the next 10 or 15 years.
Which is why I wanted to talk about it. And like, there must be someone who actually throws some light on the fact that, hey guys, this is just a sport. You know, at the end of the day, it's not life and death. You all shouldn't be making it so severe. And I think there are three teams that people love to hate. And I think those three teams are Mumbai Indians, RCB, and CSK. For some reason, the two or three of them are hugely successful, but business-wise, these are the three most successful sides in the IPL, and they have the strongest fan bases as well, and I think outside of them is KKR, and I think now Punjab are coming to the front. You look at the way Punjab are, like, you can see the people rallying around this side right now because they seem really hopeful about something incredible happening this year.
I think it's great that people are taking franchise cricket so much serious, because I grew up following the Bushrangers, right? Essentially, you know, a Victorian team. So I love that people are really getting into the local teams. But as important as all that is, at the end of the day, these are just grown men wearing pajamas. And next year they might be wearing a different pair of pajamas. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, you know, when it comes down to it, like, I'm not saying we don't bleed as fans, but you know, Robbie's played for every IPL franchise, like, at this point, right? Like, you know, you know, these things.
Pick up that joke thing again.
Sorry, Robbie's played for every IPL.